Mm-hmm.
out there in the woods, if you will. Now, that was interrupted in 1935 for a couple of 3 months. Not
Mm-hmm.
quite sure why. Mom
Mm-hmm.
decided that we need to move to town.
Mm-hmm.
We moved to town, and she rented a room with my oldest sister, my brother John, and Kyrie was baby. And we stayed down there 3 or 4 months.
Mm-hmm. It feels so good out here.
But for whatever reason, before Christmas, we decided to move back to the country.
Mm-hmm.
And I stayed in the country school until I graduated
Mm-hmm.
at age 15 from the 11th grade.
You graduated age 15 from the 11th grade.
15.
15. Mm-hmm.
And I was always the youngest in whatever I did,
Mm-hmm.
whatever I participated in.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls just looked on me, and guys a year older than me, and they would call me little boy.
Little boy.
And that didn't make me feel happy because I felt like I was a big boy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was quote unquote one of the smart ones in school. And I was looked on. I don't know if some of those kids looked at me begrudgingly or whatever, but I were told a few times after I grew up, well, we knew you and Al was going to be somebody because who you were, when you were in grade school.
Mm-hmm.
Because the other boys around our age, they were always like 2 years behind us.
Okay.
And Al was kind of he got caught between myself and the class that my brother John, who was 2 years behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And Al was my Albert, my cousin Al Walker,
Mm-hmm.
who went on to Prairie View, graduated from ROTC, and went into the Army,
Mm-hmm.
stayed until he retired as a lieutenant colonel. But he retired primarily because of a heart murmur. He eventually had open heart.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I spoke to you earlier about friendship. Al was
Friendship,
one of
yeah.
my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I always looked at friends, I guess, as being a permanent fixture. It wasn't somebody
that just kind of came and went.
that came
Yeah.
into your life and
Mm-hmm.
then they
Right.
were gone.
That's good, Dad, because I
And,
always wondered about it. I was like, because you figure they're going to always be your friend.
and
But
Al
that's
was
not the
always
case.
my friend. And even when he got out of the military and moved to El Paso,
Yeah.
that was a sure place to stay overnight
Mm-hmm.
if I was stopping out there,
Mm-hmm.
in which I did a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And he, once in a while, maybe once a year or so, he would drive over to LA and spend the night with us.
Mm-hmm.
Might spend two.
Mm-hmm.
Sometime, and when he was going in and out of the Middle East, he brought his wife and little boy. They adopted a little boy
Mm-hmm.
down in New Orleans, and he had a mental problem. He I guess had somewhat of a learning
Disability?
disability,
Mm-hmm.
because when I asked Al about what college was he planning on going,
Mm-hmm.
and he said, my son, not college material.
Oh, wow.
So that's when I found out that he had a psychological problem.
Mm-hmm. We were
I don't know where
talking.
he is now, but
You still alive?
he may just still be in Houston. He came to Houston and stayed with Al's sister Burdell,
Mm-hmm.
who's in a rest home there now. She's
Mm-hmm.
the oldest offspring of Lewis Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Is still left alive.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I'm next,
Mm-hmm. Okay.
and Al's son stayed with her until one of his grandsons came over and told him he stayed long enough time for him to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
So he moved out, and I don't know what happened to him.
We was talking about friendships this morning and how they just fall by the wayside for no reason.
Well,
Sometimes.
as I told you, friends to me, I had a good friendship with Al.
Mm-hmm.
That was the oldest friendship I had
Mm-hmm.
because we grew up, and we were also cousins. And but because we were quote unquote kind of smart in school and everything else,
Mm-hmm.
we just became friends. If we played cards, he was always my partner.
Mm-hmm.
If we played dominoes, he was always my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And the only thing he wasn't equal to me was he was not as athletic as I was.
Mm-hmm.
But everything else, he was
So
just
so
as
what
good.
happened?
Well, I went to school there through the 5th grade and went through vocational agriculture,
Mm-hmm.
learning how to be a better farmer.
Mm-hmm.
And well, little did I know that the farms were going by the wayside.
Mm.
And neither did anybody else because they had educated the educational system. It educated a lot of vocational agriculture teachers,
Mm-hmm.
which taught you how to grow crops, how to terrace the land so it would hold more water
Mm-hmm.
when it rained. If you had kind of a
I didn't know
side,
you went to school for that.
yeah.
I didn't know
I keep telling these dummies that live with me that I've done a little bit of
that. I
everything.
know you tell me that all the time, but
And
I see you always out.
and
We
so
talk a lot, but every now and then you'll reveal something like, "Oh, wait a minute,
and
I didn't know
we
that."
would go out there in the field with that periscope and and, uh, and 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 I guess you call it survey
Mm-hmm.
the field,
Mm-hmm.
so it would best hold water. Whereas if you had the side of a hill, you put an elbow in it like that,
Mm-hmm.
so the water would come down in here.
Oh, okay.
And so I learned how to do all that. And whenever there was something going on in Prairie View special,
Mm-hmm.
Al and I and a couple of guys from Augusta would always be the ones he chose to go with him.
Mm-hmm. So, group of guys, just a road trip.
Yeah, well, these were the
Ain't no,
smarter
ain't no
guys.
telling what y'all was doing, hanging out.
They were the smarter guys.
Okay.
But we were still young.
Yeah.
We weren't. Well, we were. Let's see. I was probably. I guess I probably started that when I was like about 12.
Mm-hmm. 12.
Yeah. And then I went through fifth. I mean through the age of 15, but I don't think. I think the vocational agriculture teacher had been drafted by the time I was 15,
Mm-hmm.
right away.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we had no
No,
agriculture
okay.
teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So we just had to go back to strictly class
Mm-hmm.
work. But
So, did you go to high school? Did you? You said you graduated at 15.
mhm.
What happened after that? When you graduated?
Well, I went to. We moved we moved to from the country down to Crockett,
And the country was Germany.
Germany, and we and when I was in Crockett, at still 15, because I got out of school when I was in the spring, in the summertime. What I was doing was mostly helping Daddy build a couple of shotgun houses there in Crockett.
Oh, now you construction.
One day,
Come on, jack of all trades.
one day I was on top of the house, and the power of suggestions can be very heavy. And I was sitting up there on top.
Oh, is that ego? Is that what that's the same thing for
you? No, that was the power of suggestion. I stood up there and said, God, I wonder what would happen if I fell off again.
Oh.
Yeah, I went to the ground.
Oh.
Now, I was doing great until the power of suggestion.
Wow.
Then, well, after a couple of those, along came the era of training people how to become ship workers, builders, aircraft builders. WW2 had gotten really going in the building of wartime material. As a matter of fact, when I was 13, 14, 15, I didn't think the war would ever end.
World War II?
I was just
Why did you think that?
I really don't know completely because first off, we didn't have newscast like we do now.
Oh, okay.
We lived in the sticks, and I didn't get a daily newscast. Most of what I learned from the principal because he took the news feed, and I think he took the Times too. And I get to read that. It just seemed like something that was going to be going on forever. And
so what did that do with World War II, with the men going off to war? How did that change the trajectory of what was going on at home where you were?
Well, I think it was the preparation we had been making to become better farmers through vocational agriculture kind of got put on the back shelf. And in order to, when I got 15 and I needed an income, so there was a couple of outfits around there that cut pulpwood and that you make paper from. And so I went to work with my dad doing that. And when I hear people say I worked hard, well,
it's relative to
did,
what?
But working hard is the word I'm looking for. You're not physically working hard, but you cut pulpwood, you are. Because we had no automatics saws. Everything had to be hand cut.
Hand saw.
Hand saw, and we used a crosscut saw, cut down the trees and chop them up into 4 or 4.5 foot logs. Then we had to stack them. Generally, they would average about the height of this thing here. That's about what, 4 foot. And but the lowest side had to be 3 feet. It could be somewhere between 3 feet and 4 feet high. And you sold how many pins you could cut is what you sold every day. And most of the pulpwood, we liked it even though it would vary about the size of that dark folder.
The blue one? Wait.
Yeah. Cut it about, like you said, about 4 foot long and then stack it. And that's how much you got paid. Generally, we wind up being like $1.50, $1.25, $1.50.
$1.50 for how many hours?
8.
Wow.
That was a day's work. That was not an
Mm-hmm.
hour's work.
Days work.
And
And usually when you tell me that, I always ask you because I want to keep things relative to what things cost. How much could you get a loaf of bread at that time?
well, a loaf of bread is I can remember. There was the small loaf
The
of
small
bread is
loaf
what
was
most people
5 cents.
bought was a nickel,
Was a
and
nickel.
the one that we would buy now,
Uh huh.
that was a dime.
Okay.
And but to back up a little bit, to tell you more about what life was like,
Mhm.
people out in the country they really had to scuffle of making $1 a day wherever they could find work,
Mhm.
whether it was in the field, whether it was in the sawmill, cutting pulpwood, all or labor,
Mhm.
and under uh, not the greatest circumstance. Uh, Nobody cared about making things pleasant for you.
Mhm.
All they wanted was the pulpwood and the lumber that they would get from cutting down trees to make
Mhm.
lumber.
Mhm.
But even during that period, I guess I was like 12, 13, uh, Daddy cut some cross tires for railroads while we were
Mhm.
there, and Daddy, John, and I went out and cut some railroad tires.
Mm.
And when you cut the railroad tires, you had to take them and scale them off the side to make them uh, into the shape of a rail
Mhm.
that you put the train on,
Mm.
run the train on. And
So pretty much you just found whatever you could do to make money.
everything you could do to make money.
Mhm.
And of course, some people were into
So
social.
were most of the homes during that time ran by women because the men had gone off to war?
Well,
What
no.
did home life look like?
Well, home life looks it's not a great difference as far as inside the house and who was in
Mhm.
there.
Mhm.
Because most of the adult men fell into the category of being a little too old to
To
join
fight. Mhm.
the army.
Mhm.
Now, the group in the 20s and 30s, uh,
They got drafted.
they got to go to the military,
Mhm.
Navy, Army, Marine Corps.
Mhm.
But most of the Navy and the Army, aircraft was not a big thing. And besides, uh,
Not yet. Huh?
white folk were of the impression that black folk couldn't fly.
Oh. Oh.
Remember the Tuskegee flyers, black flyers? Do you?
Mhm.
They had a, and I don't know, I haven't done enough research, I guess I should. On the
Mhm.
Tuskegee flyers, by the way, my good friend Whitfield,
Mhm.
Nola's husband, was one of those guys. Somebody decided to open a flight training school at Tuskegee College,
Mhm.
and I don't know why they started training them because white folk were of the impression that black folk, if they went through hoops and loops and diving and what have you, that they'd black out.
Oh,
So there
what?
was something, um, should I say,
Medically wrong with us that we couldn't
mentally
fly?
wrong with the
Oh.
way
Oh.
their brains and head was situated.
Mhm.
Of course, a few of them always had tails,
Oh. Wow.
but
No
not a
way.
lot. But some of them did. But anyhow, the doing WW2 when they were training, this is the very beginning of the war, pretty much
Mhm.
as far as Americans were concerned. But it had been going on in Europe for a year or two before the Americans got involved in it physically. But the way that they found out that we weren't, that we were real people, and that we weren't monkeys or apes or whatever, it's Eleanor Roosevelt, President FDR, Franklin Roosevelt's wife. I guess she wasn't so dumb. She was kind of ugly lady, but she was smart. As a matter of fact, I once heard that when FDR was president, that whenever a major concern would come up in the countries, he would listen intently, maybe even take notes, go home and say, Eleanor, here's what we got. What do you think? And they would decide. And
oh, wow.
He'd go back, hey, here's what we're going to do. You know, they were second cousins. If you didn't, they were.
Wow.
And
so he really did lean on her wisdom.
Yeah, it concerns me that while they're giving out awards and what have you to certain people, they tend to overlook certain people. And I'm always in that group that they overlook. But you don't get much feedback on Eleanor. Eleanor, when doing the WW2, and she saw they were training those guys down in Tuskegee, she thought, this is a waste. They're human beings. I bet you they can fly and fly successfully. Franklin, get me on an airplane ready to fly down to Tuskegee.
Oh, yeah.
And they did. And I saw a commentary on it, and it showed where she got off the airplane, walked over to the sideline where the people were standing around watching the flyers land and take off, and then go out and do their number and come back. And she was intrigued by it, so she asked the guy who was standing beside her, who happened to be a black captain. He was the highest black official. He probably had one or two lieutenants. They had one colonel. He was white. Because the Negro couldn't hold the position of the white man. And while standing there, she watched the guys take off and land and go through the hoops. And she turned to the black guy, who happened to be the captain in charge of those guys. He was second in command. Says, do you know how to fly one of these things? He said, oh, yes, ma'am. Those are my men that you see flying around out there. She said, oh, they are? You can fly? He said, yes, ma'am. Well, would you take me up?
Oh.
He said, oh, no, ma'am, I can't take you up because you're the president's wife. She says, in that case, since I'm the president's wife, I command you to take me up.
And he was, what was his rank?
Captain, it didn't matter.
It didn't matter. Well, I know it didn't matter, but I'm just trying to, for clarity, he was captain.
Yeah.
And this was part of the Tuskegee guys?
Yeah. Well, see, you probably don't know, like your mom do, about the ranking system in the military, but when you start out the private, you have no rank except private, and then you go through the non-official ranks, like the corporal and the sergeant and different types of sergeants, and then you get into the official ranking where you become a lieutenant. Now you're official officer then, and in the Army, the next office to hold is captain after lieutenant. In the Navy, you go petty officer, and then after petty officer, you become an ensign, same as a lieutenant in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go from the ensign to junior lieutenant junior,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the same as a captain in the Army. And then you go from there to captain, and that's the same as a colonel
Mm-hmm.
in the Army
Mm-hmm.
or the Air Force. And then you go from captain to commander. Commander is make sure you get this right. He's got 3 stripes. He's right underneath the captain.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the captain, because the captain can be head of the ship,
Mm-hmm.
big ship. Captain, but in order to be a the equal of a captain in the Army is a colonel.
Mm.
And when you get to be a lieutenant colonel, a commander, I mean, then you're in the colonel area.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you get to be a colonel, then you become recognized as a big boy in the
Okay.
military.
So he was a captain. She commanded him to take her up. He did
Yep.
it? Yep. I think I saw a movie. Didn't I see a movie or something on this?
There was one on it, made on it, coming to, and so he took her up and went to the field. He came back and she said, "Thank you very much." Went back to Washington.
Went back and told her hubby.
And told Franklin, send them over. They're ready.
Whoa, come on, woman. Queen.
This is a lot that it kind of gets pushed on the back shelf, and I don't know why. I guess they don't have enough of activists pushing for them, because people do know about it,
Mm-hmm.
but you don't hear a lot about it.
Right.
And so anyhow, that's how we.
So that's kind of how things were going on during World War II.
Well,
When it finally ended, what was the transition like? Going back to regular life?
pretty much the same.
Same.
However, when they sent those guys they sent them to Italy
Mm-hmm.
to enter the Air Force, the fighting Air Force.
Mm-hmm.
The commanding officer called all of his flight officers, captains, into a room where they gave them pre-flight instruction and told them, "Hey guys, we got something new for you today. What is it? Well, we got these guys from Tuskegee, and they're all black, and blah 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 blah. And I need somebody to volunteer to allow them to escort you."
Mm-hmm.
Because they had what they call B-17. That was well, it was the biggest at the time. Warplane they had. They before the war was over, they built a B-29,
Mm-hmm.
which was much bigger, and 4 engine with the B-17 had 2 engines. But anyway, when he asked for volunteers to have those boys, a couple, 3 of them escort him into fight with the Germans in the air. They went up there and wiped the Germans out.
Oh.
Didn't lose a soul.
Oh, okay.
And didn't lose the whole time they were over there. I don't know how long they were there, a year or so. They did not lose
One soldier?
one bomber.
Oh, one bomber.
No, their job was to save those bombers.
Bombers, yeah.
They lost 3 or 4 of their craft, but they were in dogfights, flying up, shooting at them, falling them down, shooting at them. They were so good at it until after the first trip, when one guy volunteered to say, "I'll take him." When they went up, they came back. The ones that had white escorts, they lost 2, 3 planes, and the black guy didn't lose none.
Mm.
And this went on a couple of times, and after that, they started begging for those black guys.
Wow.
Because they realized, hey, a matter of life and death, the hell with what color you is.
Mm-hmm.
So anyhow, that's how they became notorious in
Notorious.
World War
I
II.
think I want to talk about. You told me a story once before about you were working for Continental Airlines and something about Vietnam. I'm gonna stop this one and start another.